Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Leigh Spann.
All right, let's go. Welcome back to the Stream Center here at WFLA Now for this week's episode of Run for Fun with Leigh Spann. Now, of course, we designed this show to be your cheat sheet to running. So many people just dread running. Sometimes they just flat out refuse to do it. But there are ways to make it more enjoyable. I'm your host, Leigh Spann. I'm a meteorologist here at WFLA in Tampa, but I'm also an avid runner. And when I started out running 13 years ago, I didn't know what I was doing. And worse yet, I didn't know what I was doing. So I wish I could go back and tell, 13-year-ago me what all the things that I know now, so that I wouldn't have had to have suffered through so many really tough runs. And of course, one of the people who helps show me the cheat sheet is my coach, Maria. Good morning, Maria. How's it going?
Good morning, Leigh. It's going great.
Don't you wish
Just remember, if you hadn't done all of those things wrong, you wouldn't appreciate all the right things you've done now.
That is true. It was a hard-earned lessons before you start actually, taking it easy on yourself a little bit. So again, we just chatted about a little bit, but you had a fun fourth.
Yes, as always, our family fourth. Our 10K was good. I couldn't find Joni, which is kind of strange. Normally I try to stalk her a little bit, but I did not find her.
Does she usually run the same race?
Yeah, she usually runs a 10K. But we had a fun time. Yeah. It was a really fun family event.
I know that if you missed last week's episode, the 4th of July is Maria's favorite holiday, and her family have this big event where they run this race together. And one of her favorite runners is Joni Benoit Samuelson, who won the gold medal in the Olympics for the marathon, and she runs in the same town where you are right now.
Yeah, and she lives in Freeport actually, so it's just kind of fun. You see her around, and she's been great for the community. She built a track for the high school that's beautiful, and it's a treat to have her in that town.
Yes, so that was very fun. I got to go. Actually, I went to South Padre Island for the first time. So
fun.
That's, South Texas. You can almost see Mexico. Yeah. You can almost see Mexico. And I remember I was looking across the Gulf of Mexico being like, if I swam straight across, I would basically hit Florida. And so I've never been on that side of the Gulf of Mexico before. So super fun week.
How was the weather there?
Hot. It was about the same as here. Yeah. It was real hot, real humid. But I got a new place to run. I checked off another spot where I run.
That's the fun part of Strava.
It is. And speaking of Strava, get this, Maria, we can continue to increase our Strava Run Groups. Now, 123 members. So if you don't know, Strava is it's basically it tracks your run. It's a free app you can download on your phone. But we use it more as kind of a social media of runners. So we have you go to the clubs, you go to the groups, and you can find the WFLA Run for Fun group. And so we have 123 people that you can ask questions to. You can, so that, again, a little bit more of a cheat sheet. When you have a question and you're wondering about something, you can just ask, which is something again, 13 years ago, didn't really have any access to. So one of those questions was, I thought this one was really appropriate for this time of the year. What are some of the tips to keep your running shoes from smelling with all this hot weather? Nothing smelling April fresh, not our clothes, not our shoes. And he says baby powder and Febreze aren't doing the trick. So again, we had people that answered his question. But the main thing, somebody just said, you just kind of forget about it. Just don't worry about it. But keeping them dry is basically about the best thing you can do.
I mean, I've been running up here since June 1st, and we've had 3 sunny days, and it's been raining, and there's no AC up here. So everything is wet, and the shoes smell. Yeah. I mean, they just don't dry. There's no way they can dry. So they just smell horrible. So actually when I leave here, I'll be throwing them away because I just can't take it. But there's really nothing you can do but try to keep them dry. Yeah. That's really all you can do. And it's hard to do it when in the humidity. You can't put them outside to dry. I guess Betty had said that there's a shoe dryer.
Mm-hmm. You kind of put your shoe on top of a little.
Yeah, you could try that. But baby powder and all that stuff, it's just not going to do much. You can try hard, but it's just one of the things about being a runner.
And it might be where, if you can have, more than one pair of shoes you go between, and that allows it to get an extra time, some extra time of drying out. But if not, just, and we all smell it. It's all fine.
Yeah, we have smelly shoes and we poop our pants sometimes. That's what we do.
Welcome to running. It's so
welcome to running.
So today's topic is, I know, Maria, we talk about this a lot. And a lot of runners really have pretty strong feelings about this one way or the other. It's how you measure your run or even your walk. Do you do it by minutes? Do you do it by distance? Do you say, I'm going to go out for 30 minutes? Do you say, I'm going to do 3 miles? Because they both have advantages and they both have disadvantages, obviously. So we're just going to kind of run through this because, again, I know that runners and people in general will ask me, like, well, what's better? And there really isn't a necessarily better way, but there are advantages.
Yeah, like anything, it's a tool in our toolbox. I like to say that we want to have as many tools as we can. I actually prefer minutes when I'm coaching because, well, I shouldn't say that. I like them both. But I like to give people a little bit more flexibility so that, because I train people to try to be less rigid. So when you're doing miles, sometimes you can get caught up in the rigidity. Is that a word?
No, it's perfect. It's a big word, and I love it.
Yeah, you get caught up in that easily, and you want to hit like a certain amount of miles, or you want to be like the local legend on Strava or whatever, and a lot of that's based on miles you hit. And the danger to that is you run more miles than you probably should. And everybody's a little different. So some people can run 40 miles a week. Some people can run 60 miles a week. Some people can run 30 miles a week without getting injured. So, the miles thing can be, if you're chasing miles, it can be a little scary for a coach.
And, and what I was thinking, like, again, going back to 13 years ago, it only made sense in my brain to do miles. If I'm going to train for a 10K, then I need to make sure I can run 6.2 miles. So I need to make sure that I can run 1 mile, then I can increase it to 2 miles, then I can increase it to 3 miles. And so, and that will work, but because it makes so much sense. But if you kind of step back from that, and the minutes can make it a little bit more, I guess, digestible, whereas
enjoyable.
So
it's a little less pressure.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so what are some of the benefits to running by using time versus by just using those the distance?
So your body doesn't really know the difference. Your body doesn't know what a mile is. Like that. Let's just be fair. Your brain knows what a mile is, but your body doesn't. So you hear coaches say all the time on feet. That's what they mean. Like time on feet for like a race matters. And the cool thing about it is whatever distance you're running, if you train up to half of that, you can do double the distance on race day.
Which can be a little scary.
Yeah, you got to be mentally tough, but we know that your body can handle double the distance on race day. And so the goal is always to run the least amount possible so you can get the benefits of running, but not get injured, because obviously an injured runner is a runner that's not improving. So all of the research says, anything over 3 hours is very, cause and effect. It's not, the risk is not worth the benefit at that point because you have so much injury risk after 3 hours. Well, there are some exceptions to that, like anything. Depends on how fast you are as a runner. It depends on how many marathons you've done or how many half marathons you've done or how many years you've run. That makes a difference. But in general, 3 hours is equivalent to like a 20-mile run in a coach's eyes. So anything over 3 hours, like if you're a slower runner, you should always run by minutes, just because you're never going to be able to hit those miles without risking major injury. We don't want to get injured. That's the number one goal.
And one of the things at first, Maria, when you were talking about time on feet, that really sort of changed the way I kind of feel like I went from a beginner runner to at least a somewhat intermediate type runner where I am now, is that phrase, because I just started running with the run group. And, before that, for 5, 6, 7 years, however long I ran before I started with your group, I would just run that distance. And then when I was running with you guys, and then we would stop at coolers and take some and stop running and drink something, and then stop and take a picture. And it blew my mind. I couldn't understand why until you said what those training runs are doing is just spending time on your feet. So it doesn't matter that you ran it as fast as you possibly could. It doesn't matter that you ran the distance that somebody told you to run. It is how much time you spent out there. And if it means stopping and taking a water break, if it means stopping and taking a bathroom break, if it means stopping and taking a selfie break, that's still time on feet. And that's what ends up being the most important for the training, as opposed to always hitting, I'm going to hit 20 miles, I'm going to hit 6 miles, I'm going to hit 2 miles, whatever your distance is. If you're so rigid with hitting that, you're going to try to be out there, past where maybe your body is telling you that you should be.
Yeah. And it's funny because I have like you who, if I give you minutes, you try to run slower.
Yes.
But then I have like, then some I have, like, if I give 40 minutes to Carla's going to be like, I got to get 4 miles in that amount of time. Like, she's not like there. It depends on the personality of the person on what, and there's no right or wrong. It's just that you have to, as a coach, the cool part about my job is I have to know the personality of the runner. And there's reasons I give minutes to some people. And sometimes I'm trying to break the rigidity. I'm trying to break that in a person because I do really strongly feel, and I'll talk about it in the coach's drill, that the perfectionist mentality can really hurt you in running just because it forces you to not listen to your body. And sometimes with minutes, people tend to listen to their body more. There's a couple like little tricks that I do, like because people they're not willing to tell me when they're burned out. A lot of times I have to figure it out. I have to be like,
well, sometimes we don't know yet. Like you might realize it before we do.
Well, yeah. And the way I do that is I start giving, like, I'll say 3 to 4 miles or 30 to 40 minutes. And then if they are consistently running 30 minutes as opposed to 40 minutes, I know they're starting to get burned out. Which I probably shouldn't tell that trick.
That's a good trick.
I shouldn't tell that trick online because now everybody's going to be like, but I definitely do that because the minutes, like, people view it differently. And if they're consistently like trying to run less, it's probably because they're a little bit more tired than they realize they're being.
And one of the things that you've talked about on many of previous episodes is on the days when you just, you're not hurting, you just don't really want to get up and go out to run that day, but you can tell yourself, I'm only going to go out for 20 minutes. And that is the motivating factor, because if you said, I'm going to go out and run 2.5 miles or 3 miles, whatever it is, that can seem so daunting. But 20 minutes, I can do anything for 20 minutes. That also, it can be a little bit more digestible to say, like, okay,
for sure.
And then you're not, looking, because I always think too, when I do have miles to do before work, it's like, okay, am I going to run out of time? If I don't get out on this time, then I have to speed up to finish those miles. But if I'm only given a certain amount of time, then I can then I know I can budget for that a little easier. So that makes, so you're not constantly
I did that this
yourself.
morning for the podcast. I said, okay, I have 30 minutes to run. I'm going to run 15 minutes out and 15 minutes back. That's tough to do because I'm like, I'd rather run 3 miles. We ended up doing 3 miles, but if I'm on a time crunch, it makes me less stressed out if I can just say a 30-minute run or a 35-minute run or whatever and always that's better than nothing. And your body doesn't know.
Right.
If you ran 30 minutes, your body thinks you ran 3 miles. It doesn't know any different. And in coach's world, in this coach's world, 1 mile equals 10 minutes.
Yes.
So like, it's not, you have to run 1 mile in 10 minutes. It's that 1 mile equals 10 minutes. So if I want you guys to run 3 miles, then I'll say 30 minutes. Or if I want you guys to run 40 minutes, I want you to run 4 miles. That's like, they're interchangeable.
Yeah. I heard one coach say, I think on a different podcast, what I do listen to other podcasts other than just the one I'm on.
That's good.
But they were saying if you, were given a distance and you ran and to run it and you were told to run it slow, but you, again, got a little late start and you sort of sped up, then you didn't do the workout. You did something else. But if the workout was supposed to be slow and you went fast just to make up the distance, then you just didn't do that workout. So, I say it all the time. Like, so many people, I've heard so many people over time say that easy
easy miles or slow miles are junk miles. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's so incorrect. Actually, the junk mileage is that when you go too fast on your longer run and because you're trying to fit it in or you're trying to do like, I mean, that's different. There are prescribed runs where you have to run faster.
Right.
But those are not usually in a long run or very few times in a long run because the definition of a long run is to try to teach your body time on feet and burning glycogen more efficiently. So the slower you go, the better it is. So it's not a thing that it's junk miles, the slower you go, unless you're going too fast.
Unless you're not going slow enough.
Yeah.
And so when someone uses that phrase junk miles, what do they mean? Like it's not worth it? Like what do you think it means?
I hate that phrase.
Yeah.
I think what they mean is like sloppy miles, which I guess you can, if you're running slowly, you can run them sloppy, but I like with poor form, I still say you need to use good form when you're running slower. And your form, like I used to coach with Trixie, and Trixie can run so slowly and you can't tell when she's running slowly, and she's also very fast. So when you see her out on a run, you never know how fast she's going because her form is perfect no matter whatever pace she's going. And that's the goal.
Goals. Yeah.
Yeah. Goals are to keep your form as close to your fast form as you can. But it's not junk miles unless you're doing like the tempo run is probably the most difficult run to run. And that's because people always want to speed it up. They always want to do the progressive run thing. And then they're not like, the point of a tempo run is to stay at this steady pace.
So you're just so in a tempo run, what you would do to your clients is say you run this speed for this time. Is that right?
And I usually give it in minutes because I want you to in minutes, I want you to hold that amount of minutes. And it's usually 2 by 20 minutes, or sometimes I'll do 3 by 10 minutes and inevitably people want to get faster and faster and faster, and they want to progressive run it. And really the goal is to stay disciplined and steady. And it's very hard to do.
And so we talked a little bit about, the sort of the benefits of by time or by minutes. One of the things you told me today is that you never really have to run by distance. If you never did that, you would be okay. But if you are mentally preparing as well as physically preparing for a race, it might be nice to know what a mile feels like, what 6 miles feels like, or whatever. So, and to learn how to, sort of pace to that distance. So there would be a reason why, other than it just making logistic sense when you haven't learned much else, to run by miles.
Mentally, it can help you to run by miles, just so you know, okay, I covered this distance. I know I can do it on race day.
Right.
But the problem with that mentality is then the longer distances you can't do that with. And then ultra distance is even a totally, if you're going over a marathon, you definitely can't go over. So you have to be able to mentally check that off. But if you're doing a shorter distance race, and then the other thing is there's a lot of people that are doing challenges. A lot of people want to do 2,023 miles in the year 2023, right? Then you have to run by miles. But I would argue that if you're running by miles, then that should be your only goal for the year, that you should probably be careful about your speed work because your goal is miles. So just as long as your goals are aligned and not fighting each other, it's okay to do miles. We can't increase speed and miles and all the things at the same time, right?
And we know that, so a lot of times we have to make very clear distinctions between people who are training for half marathons or longer distance, and then people who are out there just trying to stay healthy, running a couple times a week. And for them, if they're running to just stay in shape, it really is either one, right? I mean, they're not trying, as long as they're not constantly overexerting themselves, because anybody who's constantly exerting themselves is going to get injured somehow.
Yeah. I would say if your goal is just recreational running and you're running by miles or minutes, it doesn't matter as long as you're running 35 to 45 minutes a day. You're taking some rest days. That's not going to harm you.
Yeah.
It's burning calories. It's not going to harm you. But if your goal is to run more miles or more minutes, or, the miles thing can be cool if you're like, oh, I want to consistently run 10 miles a week. That would be my goal for a year. Like, I wish more people would do that instead of trying to increase their speed. Now, if you had the goal of doing 10 miles a week for an entire year, you're going to get naturally faster. Yeah. You're going to get more efficient, like without any speed work. If you're doing it nice and easy, you're going to get faster. So that's a cool goal. I get a little scared when people are like, oh, I want to run 70 miles a week for a year. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Because eventually, if you're not giving yourself enough rest days, or you're not running slow enough every single time, you're going to have some sort of issue. And your body has to adapt to anything you're doing. So your tendons and your bones, like your cardiovascular system can do it, but your tendons and your bones and your muscles need time to adapt. So if you throw a bunch of miles at it really quickly, that's just a recipe for a disaster. So if you're going to do a miles goal, or you're going to have don't increase more than 10% a week. Just try to keep that, I'm going to, and then make sure you have a couple down weeks. So you're not like increasing too quickly and allow your bones and your tendons to catch up. So you don't end up with like a stress fracture. And then again, you're injured, and then you're not improving. Guess what? You're not out there running at all then.
Yeah, so I'll be a broken record saying that.
that is, yes. Hopefully that's the only thing that we break around here, right?
Yeah.
Is the record. So another thing that I'm also reading, that I don't do this nearly as much as I should, is keeping track of the miles on your shoes. Because if you go and you spend the healthy amount of money that we do on running shoes, they will, they have a lifespan, and the lifespan is in miles.
And it depends on the shoe.
Right.
I mean, it's a pretty, it's 300 to 500 miles, depending on the runner, depending on the conditions, depending on the, so yeah, like if I have two body parts that are aching at the same time, then I know it's probably the shoes. A lot of people like to give shoes credit for getting you hurt. I hate to tell you that shoes don't hurt people. Bad form hurts people. Overdoing it hurts people, but stop blaming the shoes. Oh, that's a nice coach's drill for one of these days.
Write that one down.
Yeah.
Stop blaming the shoes.
But yeah. So I put the date on my shoes. Actually, if we're going to throw things out, like I'll put the date I bought them, and I write them on the bottom of the heel, so I know when I bought them. And then usually I give it, depending on how many miles I'm running a week. If I'm running 20 miles a week, I give it like 4 months. And if I'm running 40 miles a week, then I try to replace them every 2 to 3 months. So,
and that goes back to to that original question that we had from our Strava group, that if they're really stinky and you've had them for 6 months, might just be time to get new shoes.
Yeah. I mean, I have constant shoes in rotation all the time, because I don't like to feel achy on runs. So I'm always changing my shoes, and I do have really stinky feet too. So I kind of have to do that. But yeah, you do kind of want to keep track of that mileage to some extent. But even then, if you didn't want to do mileage, you could do minutes, and you could count mileage that way and say, oh, I did 10 minutes. That's 1 mile.
And go ahead.
You don't have to do miles.
And one of the things that I appreciate right now, because I know you're up in Maine and it's rainy and gross. Here it is sunny and also gross, but for a different reason. It is so humid. It's probably, as a meteorologist, we were saying, so far has been one of the more humid summers we've ever had. We've had the wind that's come off the Gulf of Mexico, and that adds extra humidity, and it makes every run harder. So by running,
my notes and comments have been awful this summer. Awful.
It is usually, we get, for those of you who don't live in the Tampa Bay area, we have basically 2 summer weather patterns, one where it's extra humid and one where it's just kind of humid. And we've been in the extra humid pattern since May. So we have not gotten a break. So when it's warm and you're giving somebody, and you give me, 40 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is, I am so thankful, because I know that means that I can go slow and just enjoy it. Well, there's very little to fully enjoy, but I don't have to push myself at all to do that 30 minutes, because I'm taking that pressure kind of off myself.
Yeah, sure. And I also do that with pace runs too in the summer. I do a lot more things by minutes, and a lot more fartleks by not by pace and more by feel, because it's just not only is it difficult to hit paces in the summer in Florida and Texas and all of those places that are humid. It's also the day in and day out wear and tear on your body from the humidity it makes you more tired. It's almost impossible to stay hydrated as much as you try to stay hydrated. So you have to do things differently. And running by minutes is one of those things that you just kind of have to do in the summer. It's just, and for my type A's, I usually say 3 to 4 miles, and that does the same thing. Although they almost always hit a 3 or a 4.
Right. But
I rarely have a type A that'll be like, I'm going to run 3.76 miles today.
Yeah. Just when I think sometimes I'm type A, I think the one part of my life that I'm not is running, because everything else in my life is so regimented, but I can be like,
yeah,
that was 3.24. Excellent. That sounds like a good time to stop. I'm not quite as rigid about it. This was probably one of the reasons why I do enjoy the minutes, especially in the summers, because I can just be like, all right, I'm out here for
sure.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah. I think I am less rigid about it only because when I first started running, we only had Timex watches. We didn't have Garmin. So I'll never forget the day, like my running partner and I in Memphis, we used to run like 6 miles, and every day we'd just run 6 miles, and it was like 45 minutes, and we were running fast. And I thought we were running like super fast. And then we actually like drove the loop one day, and I was like, ooh, that's more like 5 miles.
So we didn't quite run 6.
We had no idea like that we weren't running anywhere close to 6 miles. We just thought we were running 6. And so I realized at that point that I'm like, it just doesn't matter. I mean, I qualified for Boston on minutes. Yeah. So we just didn't do things on miles. So in fact, I was like the person, like my clients bought me my first Garmin because they were like, Coach, you got to get with the times. And I'm like, I don't need a Garmin. Garmins are dumb. I don't need that. Now I'm like addicted to my Garmin. Right. But
and for us, it allows you to see.
Yeah.
You don't just rely on us telling you that we felt bad, because a lot of times we don't want to admit it, but you can look at heart rate, and you can look at speed, and you can all the things that you can see because we let you into our, into our Garmin.
It's great for my business.
Yes.
Yeah. It is.
But but when I started running, I think I was right at the beginning of Garmin, but I didn't, obviously when it was a new hobby of mine, I wasn't going to spend a couple $100 on a watch. So I did my first half just with the Timex, and I took my little car and I drove around my house, my neighborhood. I'm okay. That thing is a mile, and then I'd go a little, and like that thing is a 2 mile, and then I'd say, okay, I can run to that and time it. But for my second half marathon, I had a Garmin, because it was like, okay, if I'm going to stick with this thing, I'm gonna get with the times. But it was, it didn't connect to computers or anything like that. It was just something to look at on my watch. So in the last 15 years, we have seen such a change in what runners can do and have access to, which is taking people, I think, really away from minutes, because you don't have to go and drive it and figure out the distance. You can just run anywhere. I can run in South Padre and know exactly that I ran, exactly how long I ran, and never been there before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, like I myself, here's a little insight into Maria. If I'm racing, I only race with a Timex. So if you see a Garmin on my hand, I'm not racing. I'm usually pacing somebody, or I'm running with a friend, or I'm running easy or whatever. But if I race, I like to run just with a Timex, because it makes me turn my brain off a little bit more. That's the cool thing about like running with a watch or turning your Garmin to minutes. You're not looking at your heart rate, and you're not looking at your data. And sometimes like you can look at that data and it can make you anxious, and it can make your heart rate higher. And so it might be telling you something that's not even true. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So like it can be really, running by minutes can be very, very freeing and very, very fun. And, it's very different, and not many people that have started with Garmin's can do it. Like sometimes I tell my people, and they just like freak out. They're like, I can't do that. There's no way I can do that. I'm like, yes, you can. You can do that.
And when I saw a meme somewhere that was like, so I just found out that running naked means running without your watch and without music. I should have known that before I went out without clothes on.
Yeah.
but yes, I mean, if you again, and we use Garmin's, but people use their Apple Watch. There's other brands out there as well for smartwatches that will do all of these things for you. And we're so addicted to it that yes, not having a watch really feels naked. I mean, it feels like we are as vulnerable as if we were not wearing any clothes and going out and running. So sometimes maybe being vulnerable would be just a-okay. You wouldn't have to worry.
Yeah, because you're also like, it's forcing you to trust your body.
Yeah.
When you have minutes and you're not like tracking how fast you're going, you're really trusting your body to tell you what's easy. And you know how I always say, a pace, easy run is not a pace, it's a feeling. If you don't have a pace on your watch and you're just running by minutes, you don't know what pace you're going. So you really have to be easy. You really have to find that easy effort, and then you trust your body more. It's kind of, our bodies will tell us everything it needs to know without your Garmin. I know that sounds crazy, but it is true.
If we go back to when we were checking in with Nick at the very beginning of the year, training him, we told him that he should be able, on the easy runs, he should be able to loudly sing the ABCs.
Yeah. Have we heard from Nick? How is Nick doing?
I actually just asked him today. So we trained Nick for a 5K back in January and February, and he is going to run the 5K in October, the Rock and Roll 5K in October here in the Tampa Bay area. So he said he's been playing pickleball, but he hasn't been running. So he says he's going to get right back into it. And I said, well, now's a tough time to get into it. But he said he knows, but he's just going to slowly ease back into it and get ready for the 5K. So he has not given up running. He actually says he does really enjoy it, and he's ready to get back into it. So,
and we trained him entirely by minutes.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I did all minutes for him.
And he did a great job for that at the 5K. You ran right there along with him. It was
fun.
It was a hot race. So
hopefully October will be better for him.
Hopefully October will be better for him.
Yeah.
All right. So running by minutes, running by miles, they each have their benefits, but just make sure that whatever it is that you are not overdoing either one of them.
No overreaching, right?
No overreaching. And now it's time for the coach's drill. If you haven't been with us recently, Maria has plenty of thoughts on things. And so we have given her 1 minute where she is uninterrupted and can speak on a topic. She's alluded to it a couple of times, but don't be so type A.
Yes, type A can get us in so much trouble. It forces us to not listen to our bodies. And as runners, it's really important to listen to our bodies, mostly because it's easy to overtrain because we push ourselves so hard. And especially in Florida in the summer, actually really anywhere in the summer, you're going to push yourself harder than you normally do. So you have to be extra cognizant of what you're doing. And the type A runners are the ones that end up with the overtraining syndrome pretty quickly. Red S, it's very dangerous. And our culture glamorizes it. And so I'm here to tell you that it is not cool to be type A. Stop saying that it's cool to be type A, because it's not, especially in running. We are not perfect. We cannot be perfect. And perfectionism will actually hurt your running. It'll hurt your performance, and you won't be able to do as well. I did it. 1 minute.
You did it. And those are, of course, all things that as a coach, you want people to always love running, and you don't want them to burn out. And so by people taking everything to an extreme or so rigid, then your clients, if they stop running, then that's the client that you lost. So that's not a thing you want to have happen.
I think, and that along with, I don't know if you remember when Dr. Heim was on, and he said how Americans just we do everything in extremes. So maybe like we were talking about fasting, and he was like, maybe you should fast once a week, or but we're not supposed to fast every single day, or, everything we do is extreme in America. And it's this go hard or go home, or don't quit. You can't quit. And actually, like, sometimes you should quit. I'm the one that will say sometimes it takes more guts to quit than it does to just keep going. And it takes knowing your body well enough and knowing what works and what doesn't work, and pushing through something that doesn't work is not always, just because it says on your schedule you should do it, is not always equal that you're going to improve. So I try to teach my people to be less, I hate to use that word, anal, but we got to stop doing that.
be a little more
You've
flexible.
been doing so much better with it.
I have been. That's something that I don't know if it's because, as I'm getting older and things, I am having, I do have more trouble recovering. So I'm willing to give up the going hard during on the workout so that I can feel better the next day and be ready to go out again. It's sort of, maybe I'm working backwards. Like instead, I don't want to hurt. So I'm going to go less rather than I go less so I don't get hurt.
Until you want to hurt or until you want to hurt.
Right.
Because you will. There are sometimes you want to push it hard. And I know with you, like we figured out in the summer with Leigh struggles in the summer. Yeah. She takes her a little longer to recover and mentally it's tough on her. So we do like a really hard recovery week. We're not quite doing it this summer because she has some other obstacles, but normally we do a really hard recovery week, which means for her, she has the option to take the whole week off if she wants to. And guess what? Like that doesn't make you less doing things correctly, Leigh. Right. It's modifying what we need to do and not being so, rigid.
But it's helpful that you tell me to do that. When you tell me to be flexible, I'm like, okay, I can be flexible.
I can be flexible.
Right. But you have to tell me that I can be. I'm not going to do it on my own. So that's very helpful. That's so
partly why I tell my clients to do that, right?
Yes. All right, Maria. So we've exhausted this topic, but I know it's actually something that a lot of people who are thinking about going into running will ask me, and usually I tell them, whatever gets you out there. But once you start training harder, you need to just make sure that you're not overdoing either way.
I actually love that. Whatever gets you out there.
Whatever gets you out there.
All right. Whatever gets you out there.
Well, I hope it eventually you get some sunshine up in Maine.
It's been like, but you know what? Sometimes in Maine, it's just like that. Sometimes there's a whole summer that's just rainy and honestly, I don't mind it because I get Florida. I feel bad for the Mainers that dealt with the winter and now they have this. I'm like, I'm sorry, guys.
Although I do need to ask, I know that, Montpelier, Vermont is like about to be flooded out. So, you guys have not
haven't had any flooding.
Okay.
We just have really soggy flowers. Everything is wet. It is in this cottage, everything is wet. And it's, but it's, we have summer all year round in Florida. I really can't complain about rainy and 65. I can't.
Well, when you come back here in August, we will welcome you.
I'm sure I will be welcomed with oh gosh, I can't even. I'm not ready.
And sunshine. All right. Thanks, Maria. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.